Welcome back to the Keri Report. Today, we are talking about meal plans. Some people love them, while others hate them. Truthfully, as a registered dietitian, I've never been a big fan of creating them for my patients. I always felt they weren't practical. I mean, how do they consider a last-minute change of plans or an upcoming event? And I also believe that they didn't teach people how to make healthy food choices for the long term. I thought, as if, without a cheat sheet, they would not know what to do. But in reality, many people do swear by them for weight loss and healthy eating. So maybe I've been wrong. Well, if you've ever struggled to stick to a meal plan, wondered if you needed one, or are an RD who avoids providing one, this episode is for you. Stay tuned. To help me see the light, I'm joined for this episode by registered dietitian, digital content creator, and software entrepreneur, Jeanne Petrucci. She is the founder of Living Plate RX, a meal planning platform and content library designed to support healthcare practitioners by providing all the nutrition resources they need to grow their practices. Jeanne has participated in research with gold standard institutions, exploring the impact of evidence-based culinary nutrition education programs and tools on human nutrition-related health behaviors. Welcome, Jeanne.
Thank you so much for having me. By the way, that was a mouthful. Let's just define human-related nutrition behaviors as a fancy way for saying eating. It's like, it's, eating, it's grocery shopping, it's food selection. Those are all nutrition-related health behaviors. So
Thank you.
We're going to keep it real today. Keep it really
good. Maybe
simple.
we need to change your bio.
No, it's a lot of like the registered dietitians who are listening. It'll land well with them. But for your consumers who are listening, just understand like nutrition-related health behaviors. It's all about the food, right? It's eating, it's cooking, it's prepping. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. Very appreciated. All right, so let's just start. The first question is, what role do meal plans play in behavior change and habit formation, since that seems to be one of my personal concerns?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't, meal plans have often been demonized in our community of registered dietitians, right? And there are lots of registered dietitians asking themselves the same question that you alluded to at the introduction, which is, first of all, they're really difficult to create. And does anybody really follow them? And how can they be helpful? And I think it's because it's just like very dichotomous. They're either good or they're bad. And I don't think they're good and I don't think they're bad. I think that they're useful is what I think.
Okay.
And I think that the harm is not the meal plan itself, but it's in how it is used and how it is presented to the consumer. So to answer your question, what role do meal plans play in behavior change and really establishing habit formation? Really supports people just as a resource to establish a repertoire. I don't think that this is talked about enough, Keri, but if you think about what you eat every day, people who are very kind of keyed into their nutrition and are meeting their health goals, those people have a repertoire. You and I, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, you and I do not cook something different for breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner every single day. Is that true?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I have the same breakfast every day, practically the same lunch.
There you go. I have a salad that I have on repeat pretty much 4 days a week. So, right. So that the reason why meal plans can be useful and support behavior change is because so many people, we're now in our third generation of people who lack culinary literacy and cooking skills.
Okay.
So for people like you and I, where we are relatively comfortable in the kitchen, it's easy for us to establish repertoires because we put ourselves out on a limb. We try recipes. We see something on Instagram or we see a recipe on a meal plan. And we try it.
Right. So are you saying it can be used as a tool, not necessarily to think about it for weight loss or for healthy eating? I mean, those are all important for many, but as a way to get other dishes into your weekly repertoire. So
It's a tool. It's a tool. Yes. It's
so
not
people
the
will not
solution.
necessarily get bored.
Correct. Well, I mean, if you're maybe you don't like eating the same breakfast every morning, so work with your practitioner using the meal plan as the resource, right? It is a resource, and I love that you positioned it as a tool. It's one of the tools that practitioners, when I say practitioners, I mean healthcare providers and registered dietitians.
Right.
They have it in their toolbox, but it's just one tool of many that are used to support somebody on their journey for example, weight loss, right? The meal plan is not the solution. And I think one of the things that we were going to talk about today is like those like influencers, on Instagram promoting their meal plans are saying, this is what I eat in a day. Like that
Right.
is
Those what I eat in a day. Okay. I don't care. First
not
of all,
helpful.
not helpful. Who cares? And who are
Right.
you? Okay.
Right.
But let me ask you this then.
Sure.
If somebody is looking for a meal plan,
Yeah.
and we've decided that it could be a tool, it's not the end all, but what should they look for? Is it one then that has a variety of different meals, or is it one that has not a lot to choose from? Because maybe that gets complicated for someone. I mean, how does
Oh, I love
someone
those questions.
decide what is a successful, like what is a meal plan that would work?
I love this question so much, and it's loaded, right? So I'm going to answer just the latter part of your
Okay.
question there, because that's low hanging for me. That's easy. First of all, if you're a practitioner, never give a patient or a client a 5-day or a 7-day meal plan. Now, it might be what they think they want, right? Because consumers come to us, and
Wait a
consumer-
second.
But-
Wait. You have to back up because that was a
Okay.
very strong statement. Do
Yes.
not give a 5 or 7-day meal
No.
plan. Then what
No.
do you give?
That's overwhelming. And in practice, I'll tell you, that's exactly what happens. We give patients a 5-day meal plan and they look at all these recipes and they become overwhelmed and they're paralyzed into inaction. Again, and we are going to refer back to the answer that you and I kind of unpacked right at the top of this podcast, which is that nobody follows a meal plan. Nobody should be expected to follow a meal plan. It is just a tool. So if I'm the practitioner and I give my patient a 4-day meal plan, that is a meal plan that is populated with breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner 4 days a week, there is more than enough food to select, to scale, right? So now I'm going to get to the former part of your question, which is like, what kind of a meal plan what should it look like?
Right.
That giving them 4 days, even 3 days sometimes. I've given meal plans to patients who were really struggling with snacks at the office. Like that's where they went off the rails. The meal plan was just snacks.
So interesting. So contrary to popular belief, a meal
Correct.
plan does not need to be the 3 meals a day with the snacks
No.
and for 7 days. And
Should
then
never be.
because are you saying then a meal plan should have flexibility built in, meaning
Yes.
that if a useful one will be, let's say it's 3 to 4 days, but a person can not necessarily do it on a Monday. So my concern of what if something last minute comes up and a person wants to go out for dinner and it's
Yep.
not in their meal plan, what the F do they do? You're like, well, they not set in stone what's on that
Right.
day.
That's not the meal plan's job, right?
And-
that's the practitioner's job. So if they know that they have a client who is super busy, and honestly, I've never met a client in my practice who wasn't busy. They're all busy. Everybody's busy, whether you're a
Right.
stay-at-home mom or a partner who, works 4 jobs. Like everybody is busy. So yes, there are going to be evenings when you go out. You are going to be going to weddings. You are going to want to do takeout. That is the practitioner's job to give that patient or that client resources and have that conversation. Okay, this is what it looks like when you go out to a restaurant. These are the things that you need to look for. So practitioners need to have those resources in their toolbox as well. That is not the meal plan's job. The meal plan's job is to serve as a resource so that your clients and patients can understand what food looks like that is specific to their health goals. And this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. As dietitians, we issue nutrition prescriptions, another fancy word for saying what is the intake related problem that a client has. Like as a dietitian, I don't treat type 2 diabetes. I treat the intake problem, which might be for a type 2 diabetic, excessive intake of processed carbohydrates. right? So I
Okay.
think it's important for your listeners to understand that when we are building a meal plan, when we are offering resources, we are building an intervention essentially that relates specifically to that client's
Right.
needs. And so you have to do an assessment,
Well,
like,
because there's not a one size fits all. I mean, I say,
no,
but let me ask
no.
you, but here's the question. So
Yeah.
if I have a consumer listening right now, somebody's not a registered dietitian,
Okay.
they want to lose weight. And they always are like, oh, if somebody would only give me a meal plan. All I
Yeah.
want is just tell me what to eat for a month. This is what I want. What do you say to that consumer?
Ugh, you're asking all the right questions, right? So these are the questions that I would get from my patients. Patients come in to my practice. I want a meal plan because that they want to meet their health goals and they feel like a meal plan is going to get them there. The very first question an honest and evidence-based practitioner is going to ask you, the consumer, is why do you think you need a meal plan?
Right.
Oh, well, I'm not comfortable in the kitchen. I don't know how to cook. I don't have time.
I
I
don't know
don't
what
have
to eat.
access.
Right.
I don't know what to eat.
Right.
Right? Like there's so many things that impact health, nutrition related health behavior change that, somebody's ability to feed themselves, so many things. So, the meal plan, consumers come in, hard and strong. I want a meal plan, give me a meal plan, which is why dietitians feel compelled, like, I got to give them a meal plan, right?
Never felt compelled.
Never felt compelled. There you go. Some do in order to be competitive. Some
Right.
of us, felt like we needed to.
Right.
But the tool needs to be used the right way. And a meal plan is not appropriate for everyone. There is no. We've been asked many times, do you have a weight loss meal plan? No, I don't, because show me 10 people and I will show you 10 different weight loss meal plans, because somebody might have type 2 diabetes, somebody might be on a GLP-1, somebody might be perimenopausal, somebody might have PCOS, somebody might have thyroid.
Right, because everybody's different. But if somebody is like, I want to lose weight, I'm a healthy individual.
Yes.
Would you say that if I'm understanding correctly, they should never ask for a 7-day meal plan?
No.
Okay.
You're expecting too much of yourself. Like, give yourself some grace and know you really, to be successful with weight loss, really, and meeting any nutrition goal and health goal, you really just need, as with anything, and you might not like hearing this, but you need to be consistent.
Right.
And that doesn't mean following a meal plan. That means identifying with your practitioner those meals, those snacks, those no-cook breakfasts, those grab-and-go items that you can have in your toolbox, so that when you're hungry, or, if you're consuming too many carbs and not enough protein, you're going to be more hungry all day long. So that's like a minor adjustment, right? Let's just increase your protein.
So do you feel they can learn from a meal plan, where my whole thing is, what do they learn?
Yeah.
You're saying it's supposed to be something that is not rigid, even though it's there on, let's say, a piece of paper on a computer screen, and it has 3 meals a day, and it's 4 days a week, but they should learn from what's on there because they're good examples, and then they can use those meals as an example to create the rest of the week.
It's a teaching space. It is a beautiful space if it's a good meal planner, right?
Right.
It is a beautiful space for practitioners and their patients to have a conversation around food. Like, look at meals, look at foods, and set goals, right? So if you are being counseled by a healthcare professional, you should never leave the office without some goals in your back pocket, right?
Well,
Keri, I'm sure that you've set goals, right?
Right. So, Jeannie, are you also saying then that nobody really should be on a meal plan unless they're seeing a registered dietitian?
Correct. I mean, unless you're just looking for recipes and you don't have any particular health goal in mind. Right. If you are looking to change your health status with nutrition, you need to see a registered dietitian. You need to see a practitioner. It could even be a health coach who works as part of an interdisciplinary team. So maybe your functional medicine doctor has a health coach on staff, right? So there's a lot of resources out there for consumers to use meal plans to help them, reach their health goals. And, go ahead.
Then I was going to say, all right, well, this then pops into my head is what stops a consumer from choosing then working with a registered dietitian. I mean, there's lots of reasons. That's a whole nother episode. But working off of a meal plan, let's say, versus meal delivery services. There are so many today where they can get, and that's another one of my pet peeves. I feel they're extremely helpful, but I also, it goes back to, are they really learning, or are they just spending a lot of money with these meals coming to their door? And what will happen in the long term? So long term.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like meal plan versus meal delivery service, or can they obviously meet together and work together?
Great question. One of the underlying themes for our conversation today is sustainability.
Yes.
Right? Is it sustainable for you, the consumer, for you as a person, to be cooking these meals? What meals are you going to cook? Is it sustainable for you to buy these kinds of foods? Is it sustainable for you to engage in a meal delivery service? For most people, long term, that is not a sustainable solution. I think that it can be a good crutch. It can be a good starter. Maybe, what I loved when my patients were using meal kit delivery services. So not meal delivery.
The ones that they had to then cook the meal.
Yeah, so maybe they weren't totally comfortable in the kitchen, but they were learning and they were doing it maybe twice a week. But there's no way, you're not going to be able to feed yourself and your family and meet your health goals by ordering in or by having meals delivered. I've never seen it happen, and I'm sure that most registered dietitians would agree. Like, it's just not sustainable. Like, learning how to feed yourself primarily with whole foods and a diet that is heavily plant-based, high in fiber, with high quality proteins. If you choose, you could be vegan too. That is the sustainable solution.
But not everybody.
Right, but to love how to cook.
Okay, I was just going to say, not everybody likes being in the kitchen.
No.
And
no.
I have always
like overnight oats. Overnight oats, like, that is zero cooking, right? And also, this is part of the assessment process. This is why seeing a credentialed healthcare professional is so important, because they're going to ask you those questions. A good practitioner is going to ask you those questions about your lifestyle.
Right.
Do you have the time to cook 3 dinners per week? Yes. Fantastic. Let's scale them so that you've got dinners the rest of the week. If not, okay, let's potentially deliver food or meal kit and then cook, minimally. But I think that it is a journey for most people. And as soon as they start seeing the results that the practitioner is helping them achieve, then they're going to lock in. Then you'd be like, oh, I get it now.
Right.
Okay. And then you just fall into a routine and a repertoire, which is really our second biggest theme for today. That's what becomes sustainable, not ordering meal kits all the time.
Right. And I think it's back to the whole idea that this meal plan, if I'm really getting it, it's not something that is rigid. It's not this 3 meals a day plus snacks every day. It's almost like, I guess, in a way, I was doing meal planning, even though I never thought I was, because I was giving what I always called it meal options. I gave a list. These are options for breakfast. Do as you wish. These are options for lunch. These are options for dinner. And these are snack options. I just never gave them a day of the week or a time of day.
You were absolutely meal planning.
Oh my
You were
God.
absolutely meal planning.
This has changed everything.
Yes. No, you absolutely were meal planning. In my world, we call that modular meal planning. And that is my favorite way to meal plan.
Interesting.
Because it's the way I eat. So I'm very, very comfortable with that. I'm not making recipes. I'm putting things together. I'm roasting a chicken. I'm sauteing some ground turkey. I'm making chicken meatballs. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it on Thursday, but I'm making it on Tuesday and I'll figure it out.
That's meal prep. It's so funny. That's meal planning, but in a different way. You know what I'm saying? That's not a meal plan. That's meal planning. That I also have to say I don't do. I never cook extra. Like, I don't cook on a Sunday and then plan out my meals for the week. I know a lot of people do that. That I'm not doing. And that I don't think you're going to catch me doing that. No.
I have to. I have a house full of athletes. I'm feeding a lot of people and they're all athletes. And so And even my husband and I, like we are very physically active. So there's a lot of food coming into my kitchen. So I do need to plan, but I don't spend all day on
Right.
Sunday
But isn't that
prepping. But that works for some
right?
people it works.
But that's
Yeah.
interesting because now we're thinking meal planning in a different way.
Yes.
So there's meal plans,
Oh,
there's meal
yes.
planning,
Yes.
there's prep, all of the other stuff. Do you
Yes.
think there's like, because of current trends, I'm just curious with all the different, I mean, I just did an episode, believe it or not, it's still around the paleo diet. And
Yeah.
now everything, the biggest trend, the macronutrient protein is everywhere. We still have people doing keto. We still have the no sugar diet. People don't know what no sugar actually means. Does that affect anything with what you do with your meal plans?
Yes.
Just
Yeah, sure.
okay.
100%. And I love all great questions here. Thank you, Keri. So for to get real change, sustainable change, habit forming, you need to do something for the long term. A diet is not a long-term solution, right?
Right.
Eliminating entire food groups, unless you have a medical condition
Correct.
that dictates that you
Right.
eat that way, because there are medical conditions that are specific, nutrition prescriptions kind of
Right.
fit really, really well. But for most of us, that is not important. You don't
Right.
need to be on a diet. You don't need to have rigid rules. You don't need to eliminate food groups. What you need to do is change your dietary pattern, right? And so what's really important is, as part of my software, our practitioners issue assessments that measure somebody's 90-day eating pattern. So if you're a patient of mine, the first thing you're going to get is an assessment. It will tell me what your eating pattern, I'll explain that in a second, is for the previous 90 days. If I can change your eating pattern, not what you're eating for 30 days, right? This is a 90-day eating pattern. You will get a better health outcome, right? That's what the science says. You will get a better health outcome. So it's really changing. It's focusing on habits, creating habits. That comes from this, the idea of a repertoire. It's very freeing when you understand that. When I would talk to patients about that, like, oh, I don't have to be on a diet. No, absolutely not, right? Let's take a look at what you're eating now, and let's make some changes
Right.
to what your current dietary pattern is, because that also considers, that's also culturally sensitive
Well,
counseling.
we also need to take,
Yeah.
well, that's a whole nother, we also need to take different cultures into consideration when
Yeah.
creating any kind of meal plan.
Yeah.
But if somebody does your but back to the point with all these crazy diets out there,
Sure.
does your meal plan will be like, oh, all right, somebody wants to follow keto, let's do it? Or are you like, well, wait a second, yeah, I really can't get on board with the keto diet, therefore I'm not really going to create a meal plan that is focused on that?
That's a big question. I think that is up to the practitioner. If I'm
Okay.
looking at somebody who has a history of disordered eating, I'm not going to recommend any of that, right? I'm not going to recommend meal plans. I'm not going to recommend any
Right.
kind of dietary pattern. We're going to take a very, very different approach. I think, curating a meal plan to meet specific nutrition requirements. So let's just use keto, for example, right? The definition of keto is a certain combination of carbs, proteins, fats, right? Much higher on the fats and proteins than on the carbs. I, as a practitioner and in my software, could curate the perfect keto meal plan. But let's reflect on what we said at the beginning of the podcast. Nobody follows a meal plan. So why would I spend my time curating the exact carbs that this person needs? Because there's no way that they're going to be able to sustain that, and they'll just fail. And I don't want them to fail,
Well,
right? But you do have to respect what people are coming to the table with.
100%.
Right?
You have to
Right. So-
respect that. But
100%, yeah.
but here you just said something very interesting, and you've said it a couple of times so far, and I'm just going to have to call you out on it though.
Please.
If people don't follow meal plans,
Mhm.
then why are you creating them?
Because they're an excellent resource and a beautiful space to have a conversation around food. They're
Okay.
a teaching tool.
Got it.
They are a teaching tool. It would be, for me,
Right.
it would be, because I'm very food focused, I'm a culinary dietitian. It would be
Yes.
very difficult for me to counsel somebody without teaching them how to fish, right? Without teaching them how to make a soup, how to make a sheet pan dinner, how to make overnight oats, right? It's we can tell people all day long what they need to do, but until you show them how to make it come to life in their
Right.
kitchen, It's not going to be totally
So
supportive.
again, it's kind of like creating it, knowing that people won't follow it 100%, but
Right.
hoping that they will glean something from it positive and also open up the conversation to talk more about their food choices.
More than hoping, they set culinary goals based on a meal plan. So, for example, if somebody is on a weight loss journey and we're trying to keep their dinners to, 500 to 600 calories, we could show them on the meal plan, this is what that looks like, right?
Okay.
I have broccoli roasted chicken listed here, but it could be anything else, right? It could be a low fat beef and cauliflower. Like, it doesn't have to be that, but just having that conversation and giving them direction on what these food combinations could look like, and then setting a goal. You're not hoping for anything. Hope does not drive change.
Right.
Goal setting drives behavior
Yes.
change.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And so we are going to be giving this meal plan. And before that patient leaves the office, it's like, okay, let's talk about what do you think that you can do here? You've talked about snacks really being an issue for you at work. Tell me what you can commit to. Look at the meal plan. Oh,
Right.
I can bring a pear and some nuts, maybe a protein bar for convenience, whatever that is, right?
Right.
That's why the meal plan, it's a point of reference, it's a tool.
But then for the consumer
Yes.
who is not seeing a registered dietitian,
Yes.
so these types of meal plans that you create obviously are to be used by healthcare practitioners to pass on to the consumer.
Yes.
What advice do you have? I mean, it's nobody can go direct to you, correct? They can't get a direct meal plan. So
Right.
what are they to do? Follow one of these ridiculous
Can I explain why first, though?
Yes.
Because it's relevant to what we talked about earlier in this conversation. These meal plans are based on a nutrition prescription.
Right.
What is the problem we're trying to solve?
Right.
If somebody's really trying to change their health status with food, I'm not a huge fan of self-diagnosing.
Okay.
I mean, you wouldn't self-diagnose yourself for other things.
True.
So why would you do it with nutrition, which I think most of us at this point agree, food, it's not literally medicine, but it definitely can drive better health outcomes. So why would you not, seek a practitioner to support you in doing this? So I am very different in the space of meal planning entrepreneurs, and that I don't offer them direct to consumer
Right.
because it's part of my principles.
Well,
I don't
right.
be like self-diet. Oh, I want to follow the keto diet. Tell me, a digital meal plan can spit out whatever you tell it. You can go into AI and say, generate me a ketogenic meal plan. Well, that might not be the best thing for you. So
Right.
you should talk to your practitioner
Right.
about
And
it.
I
Yeah.
think I love this. And it's
Yeah.
almost then like what you're saying is same way you wouldn't want somebody just randomly following an influencer. So this influencer goes out there, they're like, this is what I eat in a day, therefore this is what you should do as well. And there's no discussion about this person that they're talking to. I mean, talking, I should be putting that in quotes. They're not really talking
Right.
to them. They're spewing on social, but they
Right.
don't know anything about them. So it's as if you're
Correct.
saying, I wouldn't want to be giving out meal plans without knowing somebody's medical history, actually their goals, like so many
Yeah.
things. I mean,
Yeah.
but I know at least with some of these food meal delivery services, they'll ask you a zillion questions and you can
Yeah.
put in the answers and they'll pick out and deliver you these meals.
Yeah, I mean that's AI generated care, right? So, you're welcome to try it, but again, I think that having that personal contact, somebody to hold you accountable. AI is not going to hold you accountable, right? AI is also not going to send you cooking videos, which is one of the biggest distinctions with my meal planners, that we include cooking videos in there as well, right? Because not everybody's comfortable with making a roasted tomato soup. So
No.
let me show you how to do it, right? AI has its limitations. I heard this quote on a podcast recently about AI. I think an AI meal plan is like bringing boxed cookies to an event and passing them off as homemade.
I love that.
No, it's not the same thing,
No,
right?
no.
Like you need the human touch makes such a difference when it relates to food. So you can look at an AI generated meal plan and say, sure, it's hitting the numbers right, but is the eating experience really what I want it to be? And Almost always the answer is no. You really need to have practitioners' eyes on those. You need to have culinary professionals, which is, that's what my company does, right? Like we're a
Right.
team of culinary dietitians, and that's what we do. And so what you find, with practitioner curated meal plans and meal plans that are overseen by practitioners is just more personalized care, more personalized
Right.
nutrition. And you're going to hit your health goals faster.
Right, right. I mean, I think the bottom line is here. I mean, your company does amazing stuff. So for my listeners who are registered dietitians who counsel individuals, it's a great tool. I think the message also, though, is for the consumer who's listening, is
Yeah.
that meal plans can be useful. They should get one if they're going to through a registered dietitian, because that registered dietitian will take into a lot of things in consideration, just like when they go to see any healthcare professional.
Right.
Well, maybe it's not this, yes, but I guess I'm trying to figure out a consumer who wants a meal plan after this conversation. I mean, I'm changing. I have a different way of looking at meal planning, but I'm
Okay.
also thinking totally different because obviously I was doing it, never realized it. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, I never realized I was doing it when I always said I wasn't. So shame on me. But honestly, I guess for the consumer, they need to work with, I mean, hey, they need to work with a registered dietitian is really what it comes down to, is if they want to make dietary changes that are going to last.
Yes. And it's that relationship. It's that practitioner who's trained in behavior change. That's going to get you to your health goal a whole lot faster. If you're working with a practitioner, especially any practitioner who operates in the area of food as medicine, and they don't offer you any support with how do you food prep? How do you select food? That's not really a food as medicine practitioner. So I would call them out a little bit, and you can go in and have the conversation about meal plans. Like you might not necessarily need meal plans, but maybe recipes or what Keri
Right.
used to offer. I think like that's perfectly fine. But practitioners like you, Keri, who maybe don't like those day-to-day meal plans, you still need resources. You need recipes,
Yes.
you need cooking videos, you need handouts, you need grocery guides, all of these things.
That is true. And it takes
Yeah.
forever to do it. And
That's my business,
I
right? Right.
know, I know. And
So
that's
if you're a practitioner listening, you will
Right.
never have to create content for
right.
your project again.
You're never going to
We thought
say,
of everything.
right. You
Yeah.
won't say to your patients, good luck with that. Okay.
But
Yeah.
and yet, that's what most people do. I find
Right.
it shocking that, our patients are, by the time a patient gets to a dietitian, they've already heard from probably multiple doctors. Hey, you need to eat more fruits and vegetables. You need to lose weight. You need to get your blood sugar under control. They don't need us to tell them that. What they need is somebody to help them change the behaviors that are going to drive those better health outcomes. And that's the practitioner that you want. So if anybody wants to be referred, anybody listening who wants to be referred to somebody, let Keri and I know. We'll find you the right person in your state. But yeah, having that personal relationship is going to get you across the finish line faster. What a lot of people don't realize is that most registered dietitians do take insurance. And even if they don't take insurance, you can get reimbursed.
Right.
Our
Yeah.
services are reimbursable by insurance.
Thank
Yeah.
God they are.
Right?
They
Yeah.
weren't always, but thank God
Right.
they are. Yes.
Right.
No, but I've been
Right.
taking insurance for years.
Yeah.
I feel very passionate about that. All
Me
right.
too.
So,
Me too.
Jeannie, I love this conversation. It's been a little, I will say, mind blowing for me. And I hope for my listeners. And we will put, well, it's funny. It's just for the RD, but for the RD, your link to your website will be in the show notes. And for the consumer, I guess we want you, if
I can give you something for the consumers. Let's do some type of an ebook, maybe a recipe pack. Right?
Okay.
Recipe packs can be really useful too.
Right.
So you and I can decide what kind of recipe pack we want to deliver, and you can drop that link in the show
okay,
notes too.
has to be
Give your-
simple, easy recipes because
Oh,
I never
I'm
follow.
all about simple.
I don't follow recipes.
I'm
I
all
don't- I
about
don't.
simple.
It's a terrible thing too. I cook all the time, don't follow a recipe, and my husband will even say, "Keri, you should remember what you just did. It was really good." I'll be like, "Well, hopefully I'll remember." I don't know. Anyway, all right.
That's great, Keri.
Jeannie, thank you so much for joining
Thank
me
you.
today.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.